And when it moved, I thought, well, that's a bear. I kept looking, I thought, well, my God, that's a, black bears don't get that big. That's not a black bear. His shoulders, when I'm looking at him from behind, his shoulders are that big. And I remember feeling a cold chill come across my body. I'm like, what in the world am I looking at?
The suburbs of America. Quaint communities located on the outskirts of a city, less populated than the inner cities, typically being surrounded by vast farmlands, manicured parks, and untamed forest lands. 180 million people live in these suburbs across America. Most of these neighborhoods possess some form of water drainage areas to help manage rainwater by preventing flooding and controlling runoff. Local wildlife seek refuge in these drainage areas, using them as natural travel corridors, mimicking natural waterways, providing cover, as well as food sustenance. These man-made drainage systems are typically never lit at night, allowing for wildlife to easily navigate their way through these neighborhoods undetected. That is, until someone sees something that isn't supposed to be there. Hello everyone, welcome back to Monster 911. It's good to be with you once again. If you're new to the channel, my name is Lance, where I travel, interview, and investigate all across the country, exposing a truth, but also giving a voice to courageous eyewitnesses who have experienced the unimaginable, the existence of living creatures that are very much alive in isolated areas across the U.S. I appreciate the comments, so please keep them coming. I appreciate you guys also subscribing, liking, and sharing. Please continue to do that as well. We're just going to jump right into the next story here. This next guest, I actually did a phone interview some years ago, but never a sit-down interview. Now, he's still an active part of his community. He has a young family, and so he asked that I blur his face out, not use his name, and change his voice. And I understand. He said, Lance, what I saw was real. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't taking any medication. What I saw was as real as you and I are sitting right here, right now. He said, but I understand too that people that haven't seen these creatures often ridicule and embarrass people. And I said, yes, they do. He said, so if you could do that, I will agree to sit down and do an interview. Of course, my policy is with any eyewitness that sees these creatures. I abide by their wishes. So that's what you're about to see and hear. But he wanted this out, as you'll hear. He wanted to document this for those people, if you ever see anything like this, that they are real, they do exist, and he hopes you never see what he saw early one morning when his dog was barking.
I think this was around 2016, and I guess my story starts the day before. The day before, I put 20 pounds of dog food over my fence, and because my dog, she wouldn't eat it. She didn't eat for like 2 or 3 days. She just wouldn't eat it, so I threw it over I feed birds out here, and I thought the starlings would just take care of it, so I just threw it over there not to waste it. And didn't think anything about it. Went to bed. About 3 o'clock that morning, I woke up and I heard my dog barking, growling and barking. So I thought, well, maybe there's a pit bull dog out there, because there's a lot of pit bull dogs in this neighborhood. And so I got up, went out there, undone the blinds to see what was going on. And she was running back and forth the fence, up and down the fence, and she was urinating. And as she was urinating, I thought my first thing was, there's a predator out there, and she's scared of it. Mm-hmm. So she's looking, at the fence, and I can't tell what she's looking at. I just woke up and had to rub my eyes because I just couldn't see what was going on. And so I used to go hunting, so I kind of thought, well, I'll just take a deep breath, get my hunting eyes going, and see if I can see this thing. So I looked out there and I just kept my head real still, and I was just using my eyes. And I noticed that there was like a black mass over here. My first thought was maybe one of the limbs fell down. And it was, first thought was a limb. Second thought, I looked at it because it kind of moved a little bit. And when it moved, I thought, well, that's a bear. Because it had, the back of it, the hair was kind of spiky a little bit. And it kind of looked like a mane. And I kept looking, I thought, well, my God, that's black bears don't get that big. That's not a black bear. Right. And I'm looking at it, and my next thought was, this could be a Bigfoot, because I know Bigfoot are that big if they're sitting down there, And that's when I got excited, because I've always wanted to see a Bigfoot, and I've never seen one. I mean, I've been out hunting all over the place, and I've never seen a Bigfoot, I've never seen a track.
But mind you, you're looking literally at your backyard. And then you're looking through the back screen glass door.
Yep.
Toward your backyard, correct?
Yes.
Okay, continue. Yeah, go ahead.
And so I thought this could be a Bigfoot, so I ran in my room, and I had a big light that I can put on my head, and it reaches out pretty good. It's not the best light, but I ran out there, put it on my head, ran back to the door, and this time I raised it up to see if I could get a better look at it. And I clicked the light on, and its back was facing me. He turned this way, kind of sideways, and he looked at me. And his shoulders, when I'm looking at him from behind, his shoulders were that big. And he was massive. And it looked like he didn't have a head. He was bending down, I think he was bending down eating food. And you couldn't see his head. All you could see is that hump on the back of him. But when he turned around, I was expecting a Bigfoot face. And what I saw was a wolf. And I remember feeling a cold chill come across my body. I'm like, what in the world am I looking at? And my next thought was, is that a werewolf? And then your mind just kind of goes in overload, like, okay, these things are not supposed to exist. And this is something different, and my next thought was, no one's gonna believe me, you know. And he had kind of reddish yellow eyes, and the thing that was, it was scary enough looking at him like that, but what really scared me is the way he looked at me. He didn't look at me like I used to have a wolf. He didn't look at me like my wolf looked at me. This thing looked almost. I hate saying that. The only comparison I have is to human quality, which I really don't like to say that, but it showed intelligence, and when it looked at me, it kind of turned a little bit more. He looked at me and he kind of went like this, and I'm like, well, my thought is, okay, he's communicating without talking. He's like, I didn't know if he was saying you don't see me or don't do anything stupid. I really didn't know what he was saying, but looked like he was like that, like he was, maybe it's a warning, I don't know.
Gosh.
And then he or she looked over here, and I did too, because there's some movement. There's a little bit of brush there, so I couldn't see it, but my dog was barking over here now, and there's like 2 or 3 little ones, and I couldn't tell how many there were, but I think there's about 3. And I thought they were pups, or they could have been coyotes, I don't know. But they were over here, they took off running this way. This thing looked back at me just for maybe 2 seconds, and then it looked that way, and then it just, about 3 strides, it was gone. And when it ran, it pulled with its hands, and kicked with its big back legs. And it just, if I was out there, it probably would have sounded like a horse taking off, because he was big, you know. And I never seen anything move that fast that's that big. So you can't outrun these things.
So you were the only one that was up at this hour. I mean, it was.
Yeah, my wife and kids were asleep.
And your dog was still outside. She was kind of off in a corner, or
She's still going back. When they ran off, she kind of went over on this side of the house. So I'm not sure what she was doing. I was in shock constantly, and I'm looking like, wow, I can't believe I seen that, you know. I mean, I've been out in the woods, and you know, and if I'd known that thing was out in the woods like that, I don't know if I'd been hunting by myself.
Sure. Well, and let alone of all the places you've hunted, because we talk about hunting and outdoors, because you love it as much as I do. And of all the places you see this creature, it's in your backyard in Tulsa County, of all the places. So I'm sure your brain was in hyperdrive trying to go, did I just see what I saw in my backyard? So I'm going to go back and ask you a couple questions here. So when you first saw it, you saw this mass that was really wide. It was dark. It had this spiky looking hair, this outline. If it was early in the morning, did you have a light outside on your porch? Is that how you were initially kind of seeing it?
I have 2 floodlights on each side, which makes 4 total. And in the back, behind, across the creek there's a playground, and they light it up. That's why I can see the outline real good.
Gotcha.
And with the light in the background, I could see the outline really good.
Okay, I was wondering how you could see that against a dark background, but you actually
There's light. Yeah.
You saw these almost like silhouettes, little silhouettes on
The other side.
your gate, your fence, and I shouldn't say gate, but fence. You can see through the fence.
Right.
And you saw these silhouettes kind of going back and forth, and they were small, like under the fence line. They were much smaller than what you were looking at, the larger mass.
They were about as big as my dog, probably.
Okay. And that's why you say they were either coyotes or pups of this creature.
Yep.
But they took off and they went to, if you're standing out your back, they went to the
East.
east or the right.
Yes.
Okay. And shortly after that, this creature saw them go and then looked back at you for a couple seconds. Now, besides, before it bolted off, did it stand up on all fours for just a second and then bolt?
Yeah, it just got up on all fours, and that's when I seen how long it was, and then it took out. So I had about a full second to see it stand up. Then he boom. Then he was not even 2 seconds. It was gone.
So when it stood up,
He was on all fours. He never got on two.
okay, what did you see anatomically? Did you see, and I know you're not going to be able to hardly see details, but you did have a light on your head.
That silhouette, the top leg was big, and then it looked like a dog's foot for a hawk. Yeah, I could see the hawk just barely. I didn't see the feet because he was down a little bit on the heel, so a little bit of the heel hid that, so I really couldn't see his feet, but I seen kind of the top of its heel. You know how the heel kind of sticks up? I could see a little bit of that, but he had his legs were big.
And you saw a tail.
And I seen a tail.
And so what color do you think this creature, or what we're calling?
I couldn't tell.
So based on what you now have very thoroughly investigated, you know, what you saw, you did some research immediately after that. Go into that, if you would.
Yeah, first thing I did was I went in there and woke my wife up and told her what I saw. I told her I saw a werewolf, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. She says, "That's nice. I'll talk to you in the morning." I kind of giggled. So I went back to my computer, and this thing was so big, and it was a wolf. So I thought I'm gonna look up dire wolf, and I was thinking it was a dire wolf, and looked up that, and this thing was big. The dire wolves were big, but they're extinct. Supposedly they're extinct. And I kept researching, and I came across Vic Kundal's website. It said Dog Man, and the picture on there, I thought, wow, that's pretty close. And then I listened to a couple of those things. I found out this thing's they call it a dog man. And I was calling it a werewolf when I saw it. But that's what it looked like to me, but I've learned a whole lot about things listening to podcasts, listening to your podcast, and I was particularly interested in yours because you were local, and it's kind of by luck that we, met, because my wife, she has scoliosis, and, I call you up and use in a RV set up, and we got up in there and I looked at you. I thought, well, he looks familiar. And I put two and two together. I go, you the guy that does the Dogman shows? He goes, yeah. And I go, oh, we got to talk.
Yeah, I was so excited. And it was just fortuitous that, you had that sighting, and, your spouse needed some chiropractic care, which you have a lovely family. So you did some research on this creature. And now, prior to your sighting, I'm sure, were there some interest in creatures and cryptids before this, or had you been really watching a lot of shows, or what was your interest?
No, I started watching the shows after I had my sighting.
Okay.
Seen Boggy Creek, and that's kind of what got me to the Bigfoot. I've never seen a Bigfoot, but I was interested in the Bigfoot stuff. Just entertainment and curiosity is what kind of was, toward the Bigfoot thing. I was always wanting to see one, though. When I'd go out hunting, I'd actually be looking around, for them, but I never did see anything. That's what makes this so unique and scary, because I'm convinced that while I was out hunting, I know these things were watching. How you get that feeling you're being watched. I've had that many times while I was hunting.
And a lot of people do, and they tend to ignore it, and I get it. Sometimes people will say, well, that was just my mind playing tricks on me,
Yeah.
Come on, get a hold of yourself.
Come on, Lance, get a hold of
Exactly.
yourself.
And trust me, I have been there too. After doing many of these interviews, when I'm by myself out bow hunting, I have to kind of talk myself down into, but now I know, and now that you know that this creature is real, how does that now make you feel about something you saw that very few people get to see? How do you view the woods now differently, or even being in town differently?
Well, I'm kind of at the point now where I kind of make a joke, not just with my kids, my son, like he'll roll the window down, I'll make a whoop sound. Quick, Dad, it could be dog man out there.
So you've told them about your sighting.
Yeah, I told them about my sighting. Well, they run around with kids here in the neighborhood, and I say if you hear a howl or if you see something, be aware of your surroundings. There's pit bulldogs are bad enough. You gotta watch out for them. But my goodness, you got something that could rip a pit bulldog to shreds. So that's a different ballgame.
How do are your kids frightened? I mean, do they still?
No, they're not frightened. They pretty much know that I'm already watching. And every time I go out, anywhere there's woods, I'm looking at the woods. I'll be driving, I'll be glancing, and I know what to look for now. So if I ever went hunting, I could probably spot one now.
About what time was that again when your dog started?
It was about 3 o'clock in the morning.
So it was plenty dark.
Yeah.
And what time of the year? This was 2016, you said.
November.
Okay, so most of the foliage off the trees are gone.
Yep.
What is your thoughts about anyone else in this neighborhood possibly seeing this creature? Do you think they have, or?
I don't know unless I think this dog man, like you're the one who brought this up, I think he came through the creek area. Most people are not looking out their backyard at the creek, at 3 o'clock in the morning. There could be, I don't know, because I'm convinced that there's a lot of people see these things and never report it. So.
The way your neighborhood is designed, like many, many thousands of neighborhoods across America, there's always some drainage area in case there's flooding in the area or heavy downpours. They create these man-made creek or drainage systems. And I noticed that yours goes under the entire neighborhood before it exits out into some woods.
Yep.
And the size of drainage holes are huge. Mm-hmm. You could drive a VW Bug through some of them. And I followed it all the way out to the woods, and there's no one, I don't know anyone, that lights up these drainage areas. It's only your streets, which that's where you need safety.
Yep.
So you light the streets up and not these drainage areas. They remain dark. So I can see where it could easily slip in and slip out and be undetected, especially at 3 a.m.
Yep. And I don't think I would have noticed it if the dog hadn't been barking and if the lights weren't on over at the park over there.
Good point.
That's the only way. I think that's the only reason I saw it.
What would I kind of know the answer, but what would your neighbors think, knowing what went in their neighborhood?
Well, if someone told me that, I would probably think they were crazy, and I'm not gonna, go door to door and say, hey, I saw this.
Sure.
I'm not going to invite that. So, that's why I did the podcast. Was hopefully people here, in the neighborhood has heard it, and people just, I'm doing this because I want people to be aware that these things are out there. And I'm not looking for publicity or nothing like that, just warning people to be aware that your surroundings when you're in the city. And if you're out in the woods by yourself hunting, then you really got to be on watch. So.
Very true, and I really appreciate that. And I know that's why we're covering up your identity, because you're still in a capacity that you interact with a lot of people in your community and everything, and so I don't blame you. And I think just what you said, I think you hit it right on the head, why a lot of people don't come forward, whether it's seeing this dogman creature or another type of creature that we maybe don't know the name of, or whether they saw a Sasquatch. You know, I can see withholding that information from their neighbors and friends, even if they saw it out in the woods 50 miles from your house, but especially seeing it in your backyard.
Yeah.
It's so inconceivable that something so frightening that large would exist to come in the neighborhood at night, that I can see where your neighbors would say, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Have you told anyone aside from your spouse and your kids, and they did roll their eyes at you, or they go, good one, or anything?
I had a guy, I thought I could tell him, he'd been out in the woods, he was living in the country, and he just kind of rolled his eyes and kind of changed the subject. He didn't want to talk about it, you know. But pretty much my close friends, they believe me, so. And one of my friends actually seen one in Denton, Texas, so he really believes me, so.
What do you say? I mean, if you, and again, this is speculative here, you know, if someone said, hey, you told one of your buddies here about your story, and he told me your story, and I just think you were hallucinating. You didn't see what you saw. What would you say to them, knowing exactly that you were very lucid, you were awake, you went back to get your light, you went back, so you went to the door the second time, and that you had not only your floodlights on, but you had a light on your head, and you're looking at this creature? What would you say to someone that said, you didn't see what you saw, you just saw a large German Shepherd, and it had some puppies, and it just looked big because you were asleep, and all those things? What would you say to that person?
I would tell them, I can actually understand where they're coming from. It's kind of like they can't wrap their mind around it. I would tell them, I can't wrap my mind around it right now. Just like we both can't wrap our mind around what I saw. And I think you just have to let them believe what they're going to believe. But I think the more people come out and tell their stories on podcasts, I think that it becomes more believable the more people see them.
Yeah, and you hit on another good point there, is that I always say it's too hard, even my family members, just because of your family doesn't mean, I mean, they love you, but that doesn't always mean they are going to agree with you or believe what you say all the time. And our hopes as being family members or a very, very close friend, that you think that's going to happen, but not always. In fact, sometimes they are the most taunting and aggressive against what you saw or said. I introduced you to someone else that lives a little bit further east, way back, maybe it's been 5-6 years ago.
Something like that.
Go ahead and if you don't mind, tell kind of what you learned a little bit from him, and he had a different sighting out with some wild Mustangs. And then after we all departed, you and I came back to your house, and if you don't mind, tell the story after that. Now, this was again, maybe 2017, 18, I can't recall when, maybe it was somewhere in there.
Yeah. Well, you invited both of us to go eat. I think we ate breakfast or lunch, I can't remember, but we ate, and his story was real interesting. It was really good for two people that had sightings to discuss it with each other. I'd tell him, well, mine looked kind of like this, and it did this, and he'd tell me what his looked like and how it creeped around like a cat and took off running after the horses and stuff. It was really interesting. And but I remember when we got back here, we went in the backyard, and he jumped over the fence. And when you jumped over the fence, you was measuring how big it was. And we were doing that, and then a helicopter came over. We both looked up, And this helicopter didn't have any markings. And when it didn't have markings, I thought, well, that's strange. And then I looked back down at you, and you're taking pictures of it. And I think the guy was looking down at us, and he said he had earphones on and everything, and I think he circled a couple of times or something like that. And he wasn't that high. And I go, Lance, does this happen to you all the time? And you look at him, you go, nope, this is the first. We both kind of laughed, but it was interesting to me because that's 4 years later after it happened. I'm like, why are they circling around looking at us like that when that was 4 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, I think you hit it on the head again to say that our little meeting that we had with that other gentleman, and I introduced you guys, and we were all at a cafe. I think they either, and I say they, I always say that there's a group, and I think it's a well-known unknown group, or I'll go so far as saying an agency. I'm going to say that it's highly likely it is a contracted corporate entity that this dogman creature has an extreme high interest with them. So even a sighting, they're on high alert, and even so many years after, I don't know why they wanted to, but I'll put it this way. After we left the cafe, for an unmarked helicopter to fly a few circles over your house area. I mean, it was right above your house.
Yeah.
And he was looking down. I could see the pilot looking down at me. And why look down at me? And, if there was an escaped convict in the area, there should be police cars, SWAT. I can see that. But this was unusual time of day, and especially right after we had our meeting.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to take that as just a sheer coincidence.
Yeah, me either. Well, to me, it kind of verified that, well, they know about these things too. The government does. And it just kind of gave me an uneasy feeling like wow, I didn't realize this was going to happen. I mean, it was total surprise. Mm-hmm. Kind of creeps you out a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And I don't blame anyone. It's just that, in my mind, was a first-hand account that what I've been saying has been truthful. Mm-hmm. That there is this group that will never, ever come to your door and say, hey, my name is John Smith, and I'm working as a contracted, and I want to know about this dog. I mean, that's just not going to happen.
Right.
They'll never introduce themselves, and many times they will surveil you, not you knowing.
Yep.
Would you say then at this moment, what you saw was what everyone is calling this dogman creature?
Yes, absolutely.
And you said that when you told your spouse what you saw a werewolf. I mean, if based on movies, and Wiley Dave described it the same way. Wiley Dave said just his was black, and he said if you watch the Van Helsing movie and you paint one of those werewolves black and give it yellow eyes, that's what he saw. Now you're saying that you saw whatever, I'm not sure what color it was.
If I was guessing, it's probably black or it was a dark brown, maybe. I'm not sure. I couldn't tell, but it just looked black to me.
And the eye color you said was?
Kind of a reddish yellow. Probably more yellow with a tint of red, maybe.
Did it expose its teeth?
No. That's what was weird. It never did anything threatening or nothing. It had its mouth closed the whole time.
And everyone states different types of physical features. It stands out. What were its ears like?
It's about like a Doberman or German Shepherd. They stuck up, and they were probably, I don't know, not that long.
So you're talking about eight inches at least.
Something like that. Yeah, they were big.
the head size or the snout length and all that? How, I mean, much bigger than a domesticated dog?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's probably twice the size at least. I mean, it's. I don't know. That big maybe. I don't know. It was big.
So I know this next one's going to be a hard question to answer, but I'm still going to ask it. You've had some big dogs, I think you told me in the past, for pets.
Yeah.
And what would you guesstimate or estimate the weight of this thing when you saw it, how big it was, when it finally got up for that split second on all 4s and then just took off, and you said it just kind of lunged?
I would say 350 to 450 maybe, somewhere around there. I mean, I've seen dogs that are 200 pounds, and this one I would say, I don't know how heavy I really don't know how heavy it was, but I'm thinking 300 to 400 pounds, but I could be overestimating too.
Well, I ask that because conservatively people will say on the minimum
I would say 3 minimum.
3, but upwards very likely 550. You've done some research. This was years ago, and have you seen anything like that since, or had a feeling since that time of 2016?
No. Only thing, one time we were driving on 145th South, and we heard a howl, and to me it sounded like a regular wolf. So I don't know if there's wolf here in Oklahoma, but I've heard people say they are. But that's the only thing. I've never seen anything like what I saw, put it that way.
Well, I just wondered because you and I had this discussion several times, and you asked me or I asked you, I can't recall who asked who, but do you think they've been in the neighborhood prior to your sighting? And the way you described how it was eating, and that it had its little ones, which at this point in time we're going to assume that it was these pups. We're going to call them pups. That was with being that close and just in the proximity of this larger dog man. That it almost has this resonating feeling or vibe that they had been here before in your neighborhood.
That wouldn't surprise me. I would say yes, that they did come through here before, because it was comfortable enough to bring its pups.
Exactly. Yeah, it just kind of made sense to me that there's possibly a safety factor that under the cloak of darkness coming in under the streets, and darkness falls earlier in the day in November.
Yep.
5:30 it's dark. And so, but this happened to be 3 in the morning. Well, is there anything that I hadn't asked you, or anything you'd like to say to people that see these creatures or people that don't see these creatures? Any kind of last words of, regarding what you saw?
I would just say people need to be aware of their surroundings when they're coming in their neighborhoods. Runners, they need to be, they're out close to the woods running. They need to be aware that these things exist. Hunters definitely need to watch out for these things. So I guess basically the reason why I'm doing this is just to let people know that they need to be aware of their surroundings, because these things exist.
You're very familiar with the woods. You're not a newbie. So you know what indigenous animals of Oklahoma look like. You know what bears look like, and deer and coyotes. And yes, we do have wolves in Oklahoma, regardless of what the wildlife department will say. And I think that's really important for me to say that, because this is not a case of misidentification. Again, this was early in the morning, but you were fully awake by the second time coming to your back door.
Oh yeah.
You had a light on your head, and you were wanting to see what was going on with the racket or ruckus your dog was causing out there. And then when you put the light on, did you ever step outside?
No.
You didn't.
No. I didn't want to provoke it, so I stayed inside.
Okay,
And I
so-
didn't want it to get my scent either. That's the next thing I was worried about. I don't want this thing to get my scent, because I've hunted long enough, animals you hunt they smell you, they're gone. And that's kind of the way I treated that. I'm not opening this door.
So you were looking again through the back screen door window, the clear window. And, I don't blame you. The fences in this area, being that these homes were built, I don't know, in the 1970s.
70s, yeah.
Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, if you see anything like that, please give me a call and I'll be right over.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. So I wanted to do a brief summary here of the show. Overall, what did you think? I've known this gentleman for a long time. I actually treated him and his family before I actually did the interview. He called, I was a mobile chiropractor, and I had a special rig that I built, and I would come to people's homes, and I met him and his family, and I was treating his family. And then he basically said, "Are you the guy that's got a podcast show?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Oh my gosh, small world." He goes, "I got to talk to you." So that's kind of how our relationship developed. I've known him for a long time. I've always found him to be down to earth, credible, sincere, honorable, just a overall great guy, hard worker. The neighborhood he lives in is just all a working class neighborhood in Tulsa County, believe it or not, a nice suburb that was built in the 1970s. But just, overall, what do you think? What questions do you have? I thought it was interesting of so many different aspects of this. He didn't really put it together on really. I'm the one that kind of put it together. He was telling me which way this creature ran, and the two silhouettes, and then the larger creature. He actually had more of a visual eye on when he got to see more detail, and so he doesn't know if there were two or three smaller silhouettes. He's calling them pups. Because they ran super fast and they were very kind of very active across the fence. His dog was kind of pacing up and down the fence, but staying back a little bit. But it was the larger creature that when the smaller ones left, they all left in the same direction. Well, I followed that direction that they went. And at that time, of course, this was 2016, that it was more, the lawn back behind his fence was more manicured, and so it was a wide open path, but there's a creek back there, and it's a water drainage system that allows water from surrounding creek areas and water overflow in the neighborhoods to collect there, and then it goes on out without flooding homes. Well, there's a lot of habitat back there for a lot of local wildlife, waterfowl and small animals. A lot of predators come into those areas because usually those areas are not manicured very well, and they leave trees growing and the bushes are real thick. Well, it ran in the direction of this. It followed this water drainage system. I followed it on out to the under the streets, and you saw in the opening picture one of these cement drainage culvert systems. They're huge. You could drive a VW bug in them. And it goes through all the streets in the neighborhood he's at, and guess where it exits? Right out to a patch of woods, plenty of acreage, and then it just goes into acres and acres and acres east of Tulsa. So it could come in to the neighborhood early, as soon as dark falls, and there's no lights in that drainage area. It's wide. It's really wide. It's large. Well, you would know what's coming and going at night, and no one on the streets looks down in that. It's kind of the abyss. All you see is darkness. So no one would ever see you. So I think that's the route it took, and I think it has been there before. Otherwise, it had some feeling of safety bringing its young there, if you will, and that's what our thoughts were. I thought it was fascinating that it was eating this stale dog food. He put 20 pounds out in that. So, as far as, predators take advantage. That's why they're a predator. They're kind of an omnivore. I've seen coyotes and bobcats eat persimmons here in Oklahoma, which is kind of like a fruit when it's in season. It's sweet, and it's like an apricot. And so they'll eat plants and fruits but also they're a meat eater too. They just take advantage of, the different seasons of through the year, whatever's available. So they're an omnivore. So I think eating this dog food, just took advantage of food being there. The little ones that he said the little ones were not eating. It was just this creature bent over, and the next morning when he went out there, the food was gone. So it ate 20 pounds worth of food, he said. The sheer size of it was enormous. That's what was taking him. He was taken back with this. It's just the sheer size, the width of the shoulders. And the other thing is that it's very scary for this thing kind of turned a little bit at a profile. And that's when he saw this long snout, and he saw it shake its head like it was saying no. It didn't really snarl at him. Nothing like that, but it turned and just looked and shook its head like it actually had an intelligence of like, whatever you're going to do, don't do it. And I thought that was extremely alarming for something to shake its head. And predators don't do that, folks. I mean, predators don't have the self-awareness to be able to shake its head. There's again, that gives this frightening intellect that we're all very, very questionable about. That's just, puts one on edge. So I thought that was very, very interesting too. He didn't dare get outside of the screen door, but his screen door from the edge of where this creature on the other side of his fence was not that far. It was only maybe 13 yards, something, 14, not that far. And in this neighborhood, the fences were not like today where there's 6-foot chain link fence type things. No, this was like a 3-foot chain link fence. It's not that tall. And they were not that tall back in the 70s. It just kind of kept your dogs in. That's all it did. You could easily crawl right over. So there wasn't much between him and this creature, and he wasn't going to go outside when he saw this thing. So, like we, further talked a little bit, and he brought up the point that I went to his place after we first did the interview, and I introduced him to another guy that had a sighting not too far, but further east along the same road he lives on. And it was very strange the day I went to the gentleman's place here that there was a helicopter that flew over the house and circled a couple times. It was so close that I could see literally the pilot looking out of the helicopter, looking down, and I could see he was looking right at us. And there was no markings on the helicopter. None. And my friend who had the sighting, he said, "Is this normally happen to you? Does this happen all the time?" I said, No. I said, not as blatant as this. And so after circling a couple times, it left. But that just tells me that wasn't a normal a flight of someone doing a helicopter. I mean, there was no inmate escapes or anything. There was no escapees. There was no police going up and down the neighborhood or anything like that. So I thought that was very strange, and that it had some affiliation or association to me being there, trying to know some details of this creature. I was doing some measurements and sizing and all that, and I think that had partly to do with why that helicopter pilot was there. And so does this eyewitness. After that, he goes, "I've never seen anything like that. This must be really important." I said, for some reason, the dogman sightings are a big deal, and they will go to no lengths to make sure that they get all the details they need in trying to locate a creature like this. So, and they don't want you to keep digging into things like this either with this creature. So if you have any more questions, guys, note them in the comments. Until next time, always be safe out there. And remember, we're never alone in the wilderness. Take care.